World Water Week 2021 was made possible thanks to our partners.
My name is Alok Jha. Welcome to the closing session of World Water Week 2021. What a historic week. This was the first ever digital World Water Week in history, and with so many fantastic sessions arranged by partners all over the world. Let's take a quick look at some of the highlights on centre stage.
Hello!
Welcome to
World Water Week
2021.
the theme of today's session is
Building awareness on the complex issue of water.
United States!
Ali is in your lap right now. That's the future.
I'd like to welcome back Seaweed's Executive Director, Torgny Holmgren, and Head of Water Week, Henrika Thomason. Torgny and Henrika, it's nice to see you again after being together at the beginning of the week. It feels a bit bittersweet to look back on what is an amazing event. How do you think it'll be remembered, Henrika?
Well, I do hope that people will look back at World Water Week 2021 thinking, that was when it happened. That was when the world really started to focus on water. I do wish that people leave World Water Week with a deepened understanding of the water crisis and the relationship between climate and water. And being a communicator, I want them to remember at least this. There is water in everything. The water cycle is broken. We need to fix it. And the results of this week show that we can.
It's very powerful. Torgny, what do you hope that people will remember from this week?
Well, I agree with Henrika about what she just said, but I think also World Water Week is what we would like to be, a home for new people or people new to water, which haven't been into the water area before, to explore interesting topic, but also the home for the traditional water community, if I may say so, to reconnect with old friends, but also with new partners and partner up with old partners. And I think this week we have experienced a lot of connections being made in between new and old partners. I think that is what I bring with me for the future and to find solutions to the problems that we are facing around the globe.
Indeed, connections are one of the most important things at conferences like this. Henrika, what do you think has been the larger impact of this whole week, World Water Week?
Well, the impact of the week is the sum of all our future actions, so that is really up to us. But in order to focus that action, we organized the content around those 5 critical challenges, and we asked our session organizers to identify the most pressing actions. And we have 38 young rapporteurs who have followed the sessions and kept track of actionable solutions. So we will have a pretty good idea of what our impact actually was.
Well, let's meet some of those young rapporteurs now.
Hi, I'm Adele, a junior rapporteur from Trinidad and Tobago. As our cities continue to grow and expand, so do the challenges and the opportunities. That's why I am rethinking our cities.
Hello, my name is Christian, a junior reporter from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and my call to action from World Water Week is let's promote a sustainable wash for a better water resilience.
Hi, my name is Cora Lamar, and I'm a junior reporter from Denver, Colorado, USA. And my call to action for World Water Week is transforming our value chains. How can we learn and work together to put less stress on some of the natural resources like water that we rely so heavily upon?
Dumelang, I'm Botho, a junior rapporteur in Gaborone, Botswana. To build resilient and fair societies, we must work alongside the vulnerable in our societies to not only champion, but to act now to ensure that their wash needs are met.
Hello, I am Saurabh, a junior reporter from Nepal and currently at AIT Thailand. My call to action from World Water Week is informed and inclusive collaboration for resilient and sustainable societies.
One of my favourite aspects of this week has been to see such a diverse, talented and committed set of young leaders and professionals play a very important and key role. Now, if I could turn back time, I would love to have been a junior rapporteur myself. The reality is I'm probably a bit too old and I don't qualify. So the next best thing is to meet one in person. Henrika and I have the pleasure of meeting a junior rapporteur in the studio today, Chipango Kamboi of Zambia and Sweden. Hello, Chipango.
Hello.
You were a junior rapporteur in 2019.
Yes.
And you were a junior rapporteur again in 2021. What's the experience meant for you and why did you keep coming back?
Well, it's a pleasure to have been part of the 2021 World Water Week, and it's so exciting to be able to come back and contribute to issues that have to do with water around the world. For me, World Water Week 2021 means a lot. It means that the youth have been given the global platform to air their views and opinions about issues to do with water. It also means that the youth have been enlightened and educated on what is happening around the water sector. But it also means that the youth are being engaged because they are the future water influencers, policymakers and decision makers. So World Water Week means all these things to me. And for me, when I look back at the reasons that I have just talked about, is one of the main reasons that makes me want to come back all the time, because I want to influence my future tomorrow. So that is the reason why I'm here today, and that is the reason I'll be there tomorrow again when we have another World Water Week 2022. Yeah.
Oh, Chipango, I am so glad to hear this. It is really touching, and I do wish that you do come back. You are always welcome.
Absolutely.
So I'm a bit curious, what solutions have you heard of during the week, and how are you taking them forward?
Well, it's interesting to have had the opportunity to listen in to various sessions that we had during the past week. But what stands out strong for me is the call to build more resilient and fair societies. The call to action is strongly emphasized, and it feels there's this drive to get away from business as usual. There's this need to really want to implement things very fast because we are in the middle of the pandemic. We are just coming out from different environmental conditions that have affected the globe. So the call to action is very fast as we aim to push for more resilient societies. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that is the tricky part, the call to action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think? What would be your personal call to action to all of us at World Water Week? What should we do next?
Well, having had the opportunity to listen to different professionals and different stakeholders, my call to action to everyone around the world is that tomorrow needs us to act now. The future needs us to act now, yesterday, because we are running out of time. So we need to act today. We need to participate actively in all aspects that relate to water, in all aspects that are connected to water, because water is connected to so many things. So we need to act now. Yeah, that is my call to action, I'd say. Yeah.
Chipango, very, very, very strong and inspiring words.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Henrika, thank you for joining us here. It was really nice to speak to you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chipango.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ella.
The past 5 days have been incredibly rich with ideas and insights, and you may be wondering, where do we go from here? That question is important in helping us to figure out what can we as governments, organisations, communities and individuals actually do next. In this next segment, we pose that very question to representatives of some of the most important initiatives that will follow World Water Week 2021 and beyond. Where do we go from here? What, where and how can we in the water community contribute? First, we'll hear from the Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation of the Netherlands, Tom de Bruijn. Minister de Bruijn is a seasoned diplomat with experience both at the EU and city levels. He'll shine a spotlight on the UN Water Action Decade and highlight some key upcoming milestones.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I think after this vital and very well organized World Water Week, it has become even clearer to all of us how big the challenges are for the water sector and how urgent quick action on the SDG 6 and other water-related SDGs is, especially now that it has become crystal clear that climate change is significantly impacting the water cycle, bringing more intense rainfall and flooding, as well as more intense drought to many regions. The climate crisis is manifesting itself as a water crisis. It's already affecting billions of people around the world, and sooner or later it will affect all of us. This is why the Netherlands is working together with other countries to tackle global issues like increasing water productivity in agriculture, sustainable water management, improving sanitation, safe riverbanks, and clean drinking water. It's why we are contributing to transboundary management of 7 international river basins in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. It's why we have a WASH target of providing 30 million more people with sustainable access to safe drinking water and 50 million more people with sustainable access to improved sanitation by 2030. It's why we are working together with organizations such as the World Resources Institute and Deltares in the Water Peace and Security Partnership to develop tools for early warnings and action to prevent water-related conflicts. It's why we are working together with partners like UN Water, IHE Delft Institute for Water Education, and the Stockholm International Water Institute to build capacity and share knowledge about water resources management. And it's why, together with Tajikistan, we will be co-hosting the UN Conference on Water in 2023 and will strive to make this a true watershed moment for the world. And we would greatly welcome all your contributions, because investing in everyone by investing in water will only work if we all contribute, if we all invest in water. So let's work together with different sectors like the agricultural sector and industries that are the largest polluters. Let's close material loops in a carbon and energy efficient way by retaining water, recharging and reusing water, by reducing our collective footprint. And let's take action by using less water and treating wastewater so that it can be put back into public use to help combat water crisis around the world. After all, the IPCC report published earlier this month said it loud and clear. Climate change is getting worse, and more severe water crises will become unavoidable if we don't do enough, or do it fast enough. That's why at COP26 in Glasgow later this year, we expect all countries to shoulder their share of the responsibility and agree on strict targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as well as prioritize water-related solutions in our fight against climate change. And last but not least, we believe we should involve everyone in the dialogues and conferences we organize, including people outside the water sector, by giving a voice to those who usually go unheard, despite being the people who are affected the most, like women, youth, and indigenous communities. This is exactly why we greatly appreciate the efforts of SIWI to make the World Water Week more inclusive by offering sessions free of charge, which makes it possible for a much wider audience to participate. It helps us to understand, value, and manage water more effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, together we can create a world where everyone has access to sufficient and high-quality water all year round. Let's not wait any longer. Thank you.
We'll now hear from Germany's Federal Minister for Environment, Natural Conservation and Nuclear Safety, Ms. Svenja Schulze. Minister Schulze has had a long career in politics, and her previous roles include serving as State Minister of Innovation, Science and Research. She'll share with us the outcomes and the next steps of the Bonn Water Dialogues, which took place earlier this summer.
This week's theme, Building Resilience Faster, could not be more topical. The catastrophic flooding in Germany and Central Europe and the heavy rainfalls in China demonstrate the dramatic effects of climate change. Water is the medium by which these effects become particularly visible. And at the same time, other parts of the world are suffering from water shortage, heat waves, forest fires, and prolonged droughts. In addition, there are gradual changes. Groundwater levels are sinking, higher temperatures are impairing water quality and threatening species and habitats. Whole water bodies are disappearing, and the availability of water is changing. These impacts the environment, water supply, human health, but also many economic areas: agriculture, the food industry, energy supply, and shipping, amongst others. And that is why it is a permanent task to deal with the effects of an adaptation to climate change. It is also clear that demand for water is rising. The number of people experiencing water stress is increasing. Many people still have no access to clean water and adequate sanitation and hygiene. In addition to this, the funding gap to implement the goals of the 2030 Agenda is enormous. The implementation of the water-related goals and targets of the 2030 Agenda urgently needs to be accelerated. Achieving other sustainable development goals and securing essential human rights depend on this. Two things are vital. First, more intensive cooperation beyond sectors, political levels and borders. Moving away from a silo mentality is key. And second, coordinating global action with stronger and more effective role for the United Nations. The UN conference on the midterm review of the Water Action Decade next year offers a great opportunity for progress. This conference needs to be well prepared. To this end, the Federal Environment Ministry carried out the Bonn Water Dialogues for results. In regional fora and roundtables with around 950 participants, 5 key messages and additional policy recommendations were drawn up. I handed them over to the head of UNDISA, Liu Zemin. He is coordinating the preparation for the UN conference, and the key messages pick up on the 5 factors identified by UN Water to speed up implementation of SDG 6. The first is financing has to be placed on a broad basis. Second, good decision making needs a solid databases. Third, knowledge transfer and capacity development are key for success. Fourth, innovation is a precondition for combating water scarcity. And fifth, water needs good, strong governance. I am delighted that more and more governments and organizations are supporting these key messages, now more than 40, and I invite everyone not yet participating to join in. Thank you to the organizers of the Stockholm World Water Week for providing the opportunity to further develop these key messages. I would be delighted to see this work continued at other preparatory events, for example in Japan, in Portugal and Tajikistan. Germany will continue to be active in the preparatory process. The federal government has already pledged financial and content-related support. We support UNDISA as well as the 2 co-hosts of the midterm review of the Water Action Decade, the Netherlands and Tajikistan. Water is a global resource that has to be protected jointly and managed sustainably.
We've seen throughout World Water Week the exciting momentum building up in the food systems community this year. That's because of the upcoming UN Food Systems Summit, happening next month. Let's turn to Ambassador Etherin Cousin, former Executive Director of the United Nations World Food Programme, to tell us more about the Food Systems Summit.
We need the water community to get excited about the UN Food Systems Summit. The UN Food Systems Summit is a Secretary General called event, and it's more than an event, a coming together, as he has described it, the People's Summit, for multi-sectoral actors from private sector to government officials and other public sector players, the NGO community, civil society, farmers, activists, all working together to identify not just the problems, but the solutions. And more importantly, to develop a platform of action at the global level to be supported by national plans that are developed by those same multi-sector actors from countries across the globe for implementation at the local level to drive the change in action in our food system from farm to fork. The only way we are going to deliver the change that is necessary to address the challenges of the food system today is if we are all working together to achieve that change. This summit is the opportunity to catalyze that action to take us forward. Agriculture consumes approximately 70% of all fresh water on an annual basis. And many experts in the water community would argue that the virtual water use of food, incorporating growing, processing, cooking, packaging, transport, exceed that 70% consumption number. So the experts in the water community are necessary to ensure that we have the research and data that will support the food systems changes that are required to achieve the outcomes that I've described before of a food system that is not only sustainable for the environment, human health, and provides economic opportunity, but a food system that uses less water from farm to fork. Supporting this opportunity of the UN Food Systems Summit in catalyzing the policy change that is necessary at the global level for the implementation at the national level requires the water community working together with the climate community, working together with the food system community to ensure that we develop the required public will to prioritize the policy changes, the investment changes that are necessary, as well as the consumer behavior changes that are required. No one sector alone will achieve the desired outcomes. The water community will not achieve its desired outcomes if the food security community does not achieve ours. We must get out of our silos. We must get out of our silos, not just in conferences like these, but in the work that we perform at the global, national, and local level to drive the action that is required. If we want to achieve the desired changes from farm to fork, reducing not only the carbon footprint, but the water footprint, we must work together.
Another important upcoming milestone is the historic UN High-Level Dialogue on Energy. This will be the first ever high-level UN summit on energy since 1981. We're delighted to hear from the Associate Administrator of UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme, Ms. Usha Rao Munari, to tell us more about the energy dialogue and how we can make a difference when it comes to sustainable energy futures.
So where do we go from here? The most recent IPCC report, released earlier this month, sent a stark warning. Climate change and its myriad impacts are occurring even faster than we thought. We have to act quickly, and we have to act at scale. Here are 3 crucial steps, perhaps, that we could take. First, we need to improve both water and energy efficiency and speed up the transition to renewable energy. At the same time, water efficiency measures, demand management, and improved governance of water systems offer important opportunities to reduce emissions and the demand for energy. Higher efficiency can also improve the quality of water and energy services. For example, South Sudan's climate commitment under the Paris Agreement is looking to increase efficiency of electricity usage in the formal energy sector and ensuring the best use of hydropower by careful management of the water resources. In Gaza, frequent power cuts disrupt a wastewater treatment plant operation. The program of assistance to the Palestinian people is working to introduce solar power to help run the plant to ensure it can continue to provide adequate sanitation for local communities and water quality protection. Second, we need to reduce water pollution, including from agriculture, particularly fertilizers. Nitrogen pollution reduces potable water availability and emits greenhouse gases. Wastewater treatment powered by renewables and producing energy through waste-to-fuel approaches and circular grey water approaches can also supplement both energy and water needs. This is the case of Liberia's nationally determined contribution, for instance, which is looking to reduce effluents from agriculture. Third, we need to improve our relationship with food in terms of reducing food loss and waste and adapting crops to climate variability. These adjustments are in part enabled by energy and water, such as cold chains for food storage and distribution, while reduced food loss and climate-appropriate agricultural production reduces the need for related energy and water. The transformative power of water and energy has not yet been fully harnessed to bridge the priorities of the global agendas. UNDP is not only the integrator of the SDGs, but also a major convener of stakeholders across all areas. UNDP has developed flagship offers to support countries on climate change, water, energy, and food production to scale up mobilization and support for countries in this transformative process. Events such as the World Water Week, as well as the high-level dialogue on energy and food summit later in September, provide a historic opportunity to shine a light on the much-needed energy, water, food revolution so we can secure a safer future for all. Thank you very much.
Of course, one of the key moments that many people at World Water Week are looking forward to is the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow in November. Many of you will be gearing up for this important conference, including SIWI and its partners, who will inaugurate the first ever water pavilion at COP26. Here's the UK champion on adaptation and resilience for COP26, Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan, who'll share with us the ambitions for COP26.
Hi, my name is Kate Lamb. I'm the water lead of the high-level climate champions of the Conference of the Parties, otherwise known as COP. Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan was unfortunately unable to join us today, and so I'm really proud to be able to step in and talk to you about the race to COP26. It's great to be here at World Water Week, and Sweden is an important collaborator for the UK government on a range of water-focused initiatives, including 30 by 30, the Global Water Partnership, and Sanitation and Water for All. It's fitting, therefore, to use a Swedish platform to speak to you about COP26 and our vision for water. COP26, as you know, is our last chance to course correct before humanity suffers the worst effects of climate change. The science is clear and the evidence hard to ignore. The IPCC report, released earlier this month, rings the alarm loud and clear that climate change is causing global impacts and possibly irrevocable disasters. Droughts are already 70% more frequent, and in the next decade, intense rainfall is expected to be increased by 50%. The time for urgent action is now, and we need all hands on deck. The UK is committed to making COP26 a breakthrough moment for global climate action, focusing on 4 key objectives. First, to keep 1.5 degrees within reach and put the planet on a path to zero emissions. For water, this means protecting wetlands and forests, reducing energy use, and tackling poor sanitation and waste treatment. Second, we need to adapt to changes in climate in order to protect communities and natural habitats. The Adaptation Action Coalition, in partnership with the Alliance for Global Water Adaptation, is developing the Water Tracker, a practical tool co-designed by coalition members to strengthen and integrate water resilience in national planning. At COP26, we'll be asking more countries and other stakeholders to join this great initiative. Third, we need to mobilise finance, especially for adaptation, to meet the target of at least $100 billion of climate finance per year by 2020. Finally, we need to work together to finalise the Paris rulebook at COP26. These are the detailed rules that make the Paris Agreement operational. Now, you'll know better than I, water cuts across all of these objectives and connects us all, forcing us to think beyond sectors, beyond industries, and even beyond boundaries and borders. Where water management is fragmented, it needs integrating, coordinating, and regulating at the landscape scale to manage trade-offs and ensure inclusive stewardship right down to the local level. At COP26, we want more countries to prioritise adaptation and translate their climate risk into resilient water investment. We need to see fundamental policy, organisational and regulatory reform that will attract both public and private investment. We also need to harness the power of the markets, increasing water disclosures by businesses and financial institutions, and by linking consumer and producer countries in their water stewardship. This is why this week, together with the Dutch, the Swiss, the US and Austrian government, the UK government put out a water footprint call to action for a COP26 initiative to do just this. Please register your interest via the session page on the SIWI website. Water is physical proof that we operate in a shared planetary level system. Your insights, your innovations, and your solutions will help the world on a path towards net zero and increased resilience that gives us the greatest chance to protect the most vulnerable people. I look forward to your active participation in Glasgow and beyond on tackling this vital agenda. Thank you.
We've just heard from an incredible set of leaders calling on all of us at World Water Week to join them in tackling global priorities. Everything from water and sanitation to energy and food systems to global climate action. There's a lot to do, and there are so many ways to link up with one another. What's clear is that the voices representing water need to be at every one of these tables. Let's take a moment of pause here. I'm thrilled to welcome back to the stage two young musicians who we heard from in the opening session, Arcadia Hugoson-Miller and Clara Headoas Schmidt, who'll perform for us their song, Hear My Voice.
Hear my voice, hear my dreams. Let us make a world in which I believe. Hear my words, hear my cries. Let me see you take through these eyes. You may think I won't be heard, still I'll raise this hand, spread this word, these words of fire, of hope and desire, and set them free. Hear my voice. Hear my dreams. Let us make a world in which I believe. In which I believe. Hear my voice, hear my choice. Hear my voice.
What a beautiful song. I wonder if we'll get to see them both at World Water Week 2022. I do hope so, and I hope that they'll write us another new song. I've become a massive fan. I hope that one day we'll just be able to call them Arcadia and Clara. You saw them here first, remember that. Now, I'd like to invite back to the stage Torgny Holmgren to provide a glimpse for us into next year's conference. Welcome back, Torgny. So nice to see you again. Now, as we wrap up World Water Week 2021, what can we expect next year in World Water Week 2022?
Well, next year we will continue to build what we have been discussing this week, how to build resilient faster by addressing the most pressing water issues. We will have a special focus on the value of water, which I believe is a key to also solve the looming global water crisis, but also to tackle climate change. If we continue to underestimate water, the value of water, we will fail to manage it properly. In addition to that, we will also get a glimpse of all freshwater issues, a glimpse. We will look into it, like invisible water and groundwater, that we might not be aware of, but that are so critical for our survival on this planet.
So more specifically, what do you mean by invisible water?
Well, you can say that water that we see with our eyes, like in rivers, lakes, and streams, what we call the blue water, of course, is what we day-to-day see, and also what we get our taps in our homes. But the invisible water, that could be water in the soil, what we call the green water, or it could also be the groundwater and the atmosphere. And this virtual water is so important and has such an impact, immense impact on the way that for our living and food production, etc. So I think this is also very closely related to how we value water, that we also recognize this invisible water in our addressing the water issues in the years to come.
Okay, so tell me what kinds of sessions you hope to run in 2022.
Well, I hope that we will see, and I'm quite sure that we will see the kind of diversity and determination to come forward with solving problems that we have been doing this year, and also coming back and addressing the 5 main topics or challenges that we have been doing this year. Building resilient societies, working together with nature, transforming our value chain, rethinking our cities, and also in investing in systemic change. And all these challenges are linked to how we value water from different perspectives, like the 3 SDGs or the sustainability goals, where we have the economic, social, cultural, and environmental and spiritual perspectives. I think those are very closely related. I think that will be the key for next World Water Week. So I could see a range of topics being addressed next year, all from pricing of water to what we can learn from indigenous people's knowledge of water.
Sounds very exciting. Thank you, Torgny. Valuing water resources resonates with me personally, as it goes right to the heart of our relationship with water, both water we can see and the water that's hidden and that we take for granted. To steer us further in the right direction as we prepare for World Water Week 2022, I'm now joined by Dr. John Cherry, the laureate of the 2020 Stockholm Water Prize, and Dr. Naho Mirumachi, who teaches environmental politics at King's College London. John, you received the Stockholm Water Prize for your pioneering research on groundwater, and Naho, you're a researcher on transboundary water issues. You both collaborated closely with another recipient of the Stockholm Water Prize, the late Dr. Tony Allen, who coined the concept of virtual water. Now, first, John, I'd like to ask you, why should we care about groundwater?
Well, a number of reasons. Probably first, because groundwater supports the important part of the world's food supply. 40% of world agriculture is irrigation supported, and 70% of irrigation is groundwater supported. The importance of groundwater, however, though, is that this groundwater contribution to world food supply is in jeopardy. We've long ago passed the tipping point in terms of sustainability. So even without the rising global population of 2 or 3 more billion people, water is unstable in terms of our food supply. And the other reason, of course, is that most of the time, most rivers, streams, and wetlands are supported by groundwater, because when it rains, the water runs off to the ocean, and the water you have left, slowly seeping out of the ground, is groundwater, maintaining ecological systems and just about everything else connected with water. People only see rivers and lakes, but in fact, groundwater is 99% of all liquid fresh water. So it's the foundation to it all, to ecology and to food supply.
Now, what do you think are the greatest risks to that water then?
Well, the greatest risk is over pumping. We call it depletion and pollution. So, at millions and millions of locations across the globe are toxic chemicals from sewage and industry and sewers and spills and highway runoff and everything else are going into groundwater. So groundwater is the grave in our cradle-to-grave economic system. And so when we add up the fact that we're taking so much water out of aquifers, in fact, we're taking so much water out of aquifers that it's 25% of sea level rise. So people think that the impending crisis that humanity is facing is climate change. And yes, climate change is a big crisis. But the one that's going to hit us the soonest is water, and that's going to hit us on food and ecology.
Thank you, John, for helping us to understand the threats to groundwater and to global food security. Now, Naho, can I turn to you? Your research focuses on virtual water, which is such a vital concept when we discuss water risks and global food security. Can you just help us understand what virtual water is?
Sure, thanks, Alec. Well, virtual water was a concept developed by Tony Allen, who you mentioned. Professor Tony Allen was working in the Middle East in the late 1980s and also developed this idea at around that time when he realized that the Middle Eastern countries didn't go to war over water, even though it's a very dry and arid place and lots of countries were facing national water deficit. Actually, they solved it through the trade of food. Because there are vast quantities of water embedded in food, for example, it takes a ton of water to grow just 1 kilogram of wheat, then trade helps solve the immediate local problems of lack of water to grow food. So by importing food, you're able to relieve the local pressures. And Tony said that there are global solutions which are tied to trade in the political economy. And as the years went on, water policy began to recognize not only the role of surface water as well as groundwater, but also the role of water embedded in food.
So can trading food be part of the solution to the global water crisis?
Well, yes and no. It's not really all that easy. When virtual water became well known as a concept and taken up in policy, it really did help people understand the fact that there are vast quantities of water, as I mentioned, in food and also in the products that we trade, like our T-shirts, any kind of manufactured good. But we also found that water was seriously undervalued. Trade of food and other manufactured goods currently doesn't take into account the environmental burdens or the risks that farmers take in order to produce them. The price of food, for example, doesn't really reflect the amount of money and effort it requires to do proper environmental stewardship and look after our rivers, look after our groundwaters that John mentioned is depleting at a very rapid rate, and also the pollution that we're causing to these water bodies. And there's also a problem between the developed world and the developing world in the sense that there are some products that are traded. For example, a couple of years ago, the unassuming asparagus, which is very much a luxury food item in the UK, came into the news because of the over-abstraction due to UK demand on Peruvian asparagus. So what we consume in one part of the world can have implications in other parts of the world. And I'm sure many of our viewers would be aware of issues around land grabs, for example. The issue of land grab has become a hot topic because of the fact that in many of these places, it could be that it's not food for eating that's being produced, but actually food for products for biofuel, so agricultural goods for energy that is being produced. And so that really puts into a challenge of, do you pursue using water for local food security, or do you use water for the global trade, which might end up being as biofuels. So there are many inequalities that we're starting to see that are embedded in this global food trade system. And it's very important that we recognize that it's not an equitable system, that there are a lot of inequalities, there are a lot of injustices that certain communities, certain individuals have to face in order to support this massive global trade system.
Both of you have outlined the complex, wicked problems associated with groundwater and virtual water. I'd like to hear from you both where you think we can make positive steps forward. John, perhaps let's start with you. With the issue of groundwater, we don't see it perhaps, and awareness is a really important aspect of it, but how do we start to make the world care and do something about the issue?
Oh, I'd like to go back to your previous question about global trade of water. And I think from a groundwater viewpoint, it's pretty clear that global trade of water, virtual water in the groundwater context of globalization has done much more harm than good. There's extreme pollution going on, there's extreme overpumping going on, there's extreme exploitation of people going on. So globalization combined with virtual water then is basically an impending disaster. Now, your question about what can we do about the state of things, we certainly need to change the way that we handle water in a globalized context. It also argues very much for countries trying to become food secure in their own right. Shipping things around the world ultimately leaves society very vulnerable to droughts. We've got global droughts happening as never before across the globe. Droughts are tipping points for groundwater. So basically for all these irrigated crops dependent upon pumping, droughts are coming on, and that's just not sustainable. Now, what we can do about it individually, there are two things. We need to push for a different type of agriculture, basically sustainable agriculture, and we need to eat different food. Food is such a big deal, particularly meat eating, that the president of China has told the people of China that they need to cut down their meat eating by 50%. So this isn't an obscure problem. It's a problem that each individual needs to take a role in. And I might point out that Tony Allen became a vegetarian after he realized the consequences of virtual water, and I became a vegetarian shortly thereafter. Personal choices.
Well, Naho, how about you? Would you take inspiration, obviously, from Tony Allen in the way he does things? But where do we start to tackle this really vast global problem of virtual water?
Sure, it's not an easy problem, but I think it comes down to valuing water. Ultimately, so far, valuing water has been ultimately political. It's been undervalued because there is a political economic system that has found it convenient, or at least regarded it as unproblematic, not to consider water inputs into agriculture and food trade. So we don't really value water to take into account all the pressures that we put on our ecosystems to the pollution that we do. So we do have grave problems of undervalued water in the global food system that will ultimately end up destroying our water bodies and as well as land in the long term. And I think rethinking about these environmental inputs, about water, about land, and thinking about exactly what John said about how we do agriculture, this needs to become a much bigger topic in my view.
John, you were saying agriculture is the core topic here when it comes to thinking about how to make improvements. But how do you square that with personal choices? Is it that the consumers have to want to eat different things and then farmers follow, or can governments and farmers make lead the issue themselves?
Well, I don't know, but in China, because they have a different system, they're going to settle that, I think, by edict. For the rest of us, then that's a big question. But we all have to realize that every time we sit down to a meal, we make a choice to either do harm to the world water system and the ecology or not. And I guess it's this realization that's so important. I mean, everybody thinks that climate change is going to be the disaster. The disasters are not going to be climate change, first of all. The disasters are the implications of it that are going to affect food and ecology.
John, Naho, you've both provided such a clear picture of what's at stake. And it's actually a worrying picture that we don't value water properly, both invisible or invisible. And you've also helped us, pointed us in the direction of some clear actions to take. Each of us can start to think about actions and solutions before we return for World Water Week 2022. And let's see how many people have become vegetarians by then as well. Thank you, John and Naho. This has been an inspiring conversation.
Thank you.
As we enter the final segment of this closing session, I'd like to bring you some inspiring voices and stories that remind us what's really at stake when we ask the question, what's the value of water? For this next presentation, I'll let the images and sounds speak for themselves.
tay kita kat muka menua. Gelap. Bumi rayanya banyak timau kat muka kita. Udahnya kita merang kat kita dia tulak megangnya. Udahnya baru api yang tengah pada. Api yang masuk kita tulak kami rusak semua kami. Tengah kami atau kan muka. Tanah buah tengah kami, ikan lempan kami, kayu ramu kami. Tanah adat tu. Sini pun kami.
That was incredibly powerful. It's hard to believe that that was a clip from a documentary film made by a 16-year-old filmmaker and photographer, Kinan Tegar. Kinan was raised in an indigenous community called Dayak Iban in Indonesia. We asked Kinan about the value of water for him and his community.
To me, to us, indigenous people, water is something that is basically our everything. It's inseparable from us, especially to my tribe, the Daya Iban tribe, because we have always been a river-dwelling tribe, and because of that, we built our traditional houses, the long houses. They are never built far from the rivers, and the river itself is one of the most sacred things to us because we use it to cleanse ourselves too. When a child is first born, for example, we bathe them in the river to cast away any bad omens and to bless them in the future. Occasionally too, we would give offerings to the river, usually at the start and near the end of the farming season, ensuring that anyone who uses the river to bathe or to transport their crops will have a safe passage, and also to be avoid of any diseases that the river may carry. Now, to us, culturally, it has always been passed down from our elders and the importance of the forest. Because one of the quotes that I vividly remember one of the elders saying was that the land is our mother, the forest is our father, and the river is our blood. If our blood is contaminated, if it is polluted, then we would cease to exist, we would cease to be, and so too with anything that lives in the forest, the trees, the animals within it, everything. And that is why it's just such an inseparable part of us. I think for young people especially, and myself speaking as one, we've been so disconnected from what water actually is. I know a lot of my friends in the city, they have never went up to the river, to the very source of it, up in the mountains, and see what is it we are drinking, what is it that we are taking for granted here. And what I want other people to do is to honor that very concept that water is what gives us life, and also to help in a way to protect it, because where I am right now is a city around 1 hour away from my village, and even here, when I look down at the river that flows through this town, it is no longer drinkable, let alone anything else really, because there used to be a legend around here that anyone who drinks the water of the Kapuas River, they would gain youth. And if they are to do that now, it would do the exact opposite. So I think my message is to appreciate the water and to help protect it in what way we can do.
I know that Kinan was speaking to his own generation there, but it's hard not to be humbled by his message. There's a lot to learn from Kinan and the wisdom of his elders. The comparison of a river to the blood in our bodies will stay with me. Healthy waters, healthy planet, resilient communities. Turning from Indonesia, now we hear from the next generation of leaders in Mali and the UK. Let's listen in on a conversation between Hadi Touré and Eleanor Treadwell. two young professionals in the water sector who also shared their views on valuing water.
So this is Hadi and baby Ali, and they are from Mali.
This is Eleanor. She's from the UK.
We're friends and coming from very different backgrounds and cultures, but we're both early career water professionals and on the same page about water. And we live on either side of the River Niger in Bamako.
Despite our differences, at the end of the day, we have the privilege to collaborate and learn from each other's values.
And what do you think that it actually helps us to collaborate so well together?
We collaborate together because we're open-minded, challenge one another, and enjoy looking in each other's boxes, embracing the differences.
That's for sure. And for the World Water Week, we were asked to comment on the value of water. But when we were thinking and discussing what we could say about this, the stories and experiences that came up were more about how we value water and raising awareness for the ways in which water could be valued. And one particular story came up that really showed the importance of the awareness raising and education.
Yes, so when I was in Markala doing workshops about water filters and showing high school girls the knowledge I gained, it empowered them, and I was also able to show them the impact of their activities on the river, what serves them mainly. But I mainly let them talk about what is important to them about the river. For me, this was so interesting to learn from their point of view, people who live in, on, and with the river every day, why the Niger is so important.
And this is such a nice example of value being a two-way conversation, that it really is an exchange.
Yeah, we gave them a chance to speak by listening to them and having a conversation. They can tell all these stories to their families and educate each other, telling them there is a whole sector out there that analyzes water, where you can apply the knowledge directly to the daily life. I hope this helped encourage the girls to stay in school and pursue sciences. Education, raising awareness through education and connecting knowledge to reality is so important. In a big way, we can change the way we value water, because let's face it, right now, water quality is not great around the world.
So one aspect of valuing water is through that education and awareness raising, which you've done yourself in a rural part of Mali. And this was built by listening. And I think you know who I'm going to reference now, because I do it all the time. But Aaron Wolf gives a really comprehensive guide about how to actively and deeply listen. And he gives 4 points of how to do this. But the fourth, it feels like a good place to end here and look to the next steps, where we should listen and think in terms of future and not history, and speak in terms of the future and the present tense, not the past. And that can helpfully allow us to think collectively, reduce the otherness, and build a common future, sharing each other's boxes. And I think Ali is in your lap right now, and that's the future.
What a powerful and inspiring way to finish World Water Week 2021. When there are so many reasons to be pessimistic, I think we have many more reasons to give us optimism. Kainan, Hadi and Eleanor point us toward a future where our relationship with water could be transformed. Now, to bring this session to a close, I'd like to invite Henrika and Torgny back to the stage. Henrika, what do you see as the next steps?
Well, next year's theme is about valuing water and invisible water, like groundwater, crucial to our survival, but often forgotten. But to me, it is important to state that valuing water is not about economics or metrics. I am going to quote Dag Hammarskjöld, the former UN Secretary General. He says that it is a personal journey to our inner sources. And I personally think that without that personal journey, we will never make it.
Torgny. What are the next steps?
Well, I fully agree with Henrika to start off with, and we should address the value of water theme, how we address water in the global community. But to successfully tackle climate change, for instance, that IPCC told us so bluntly 2 weeks ago, we need to come up with more smart water-related solutions. And here I believe that more investments in nature-based solutions will play a more critical role in the years to come. And I see encouraging signs that we have a booming interest in green investments, but I have a word of caution here, because we need to take water aspects into account. We do see massive investments coming up in manufacturing industry and promising alternative energy resources, but those require uninterrupted access to clean water in huge quantities. And that we cannot take for granted, as global warming is changing the rainfall patterns and our accessibility to water in the future.
So in the coming years, is that the change you want to see?
Well, yeah, more investments in green, yes, definitely. But we need to bring in the water aspect, and I think that is still missing to a large extent.
So in the coming years, Henrika, what change do you want to see?
Well, I do hope that many more people will join us on the journey.
So more people for World Water Week 2022 and onwards. Thank you, Henrika. Thank you, Torgny. And thank you for joining us for what's been a very special closing session, both looking back at the past week, but also looking steadfastly forward. The next steps are clear. We all need to get to work on building resilience faster through water. See you next year, and stay healthy and well.